Hello, my name is Alexander Monahan, and I wrote a speech because I was hoping to run for federal office in 2025, but since I wasn't able to find a campaign manager, and since time is of the essence, I am just going to read most of my speech. My reason for writing this speech is because I feel like I lost my liberty over Justin Trudeau's lockdown, and I feel like I need to make a plea to try and get my liberty back just by asking everybody to make it a election point to have Justin Trudeau's bad policies, including all the COVID statutes, repealed. And if we can do this, I think we can get our liberty back peacefully and outperform the history book. I very deeply need to air my grievances about it. And I have to admit that I was not able to finish my speech completely. I just ran out of time being able to get all the quotes and everything I needed. This was supposed to be a 2 or 3 part speech. The first part I'm reading to you is intended to be a qualitative project comparing pre-Nazi Germany under Hitler and Justin Trudeau's lockdown, as well as trying to grapple with the question that Dr. Peterson has been asking: where does the right go wrong? As well, an argument of appeal to authority as far as compliance is concerned. The second part was going to be Justin Trudeau's lockdown versus communism, more on the academic side of things, where I was going to try and grapple with where does the left go wrong and try and work into the argument appeal to authority from the position of agreement. The third was going to be a grapple of the first and the 2 speeches, where I would question why are both communist and fascism appearing in our country, and are they trying to defeat each other, or are they becoming one body? Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm writing this as an anti-fascist appeal. If you are not prepared to listen to this, or you have children that should not hear this, maybe you should stop listening now. Where I first started in my framing of fascism, in that there was a hierarchy of worship of holy combat, where it used espionage to take advantage of people who are high in negative emotion. The second frame I came up with was significantly more simplistic, where I tried to explain more about what roles are fascistic. For a soldier to be fascistic, in my unprofessional opinion, he or she would have to be addicted to committing war crimes. For police officers to be fascistic, they would have to be willing and able of using armed forces level violence against general citizens. Lastly, for a citizen to be a fascist, they would need to have police powers that they would be expected to use against political opponents and varying minority groups. On my second reading of Chapter 1 of Anatomy of Fascism, I started wondering if fascism is more the idea of lying, cheating, and stealing to get ahead. Even if done by somebody who is sociopathic or doesn't value human life and willing to crawl over corpses just to get to the top. Now, according to Robert O. Paxton and his book, The Anatomy of Fascism, he defines fascism as the open terroristic dictatorship of the most reactionary and most chauvinist and most imperialist elements of finance capital. Mr. Paxton's book will be the main source of information for this speech, at least for the first part. I took a number of excerpts, pasted them together, made a bunch of paragraphs. There is a large disagreement of what fascism is, and some think that what they say is important, and others think what they do is important. Sometimes others think they are just extreme capitalists coming to the aid of capitalists in trouble. And propped up by emergency means, the existing system of property distribution and social hierarchy, to paraphrase Robert O. Paxton, fascism or fascists need, or at least the word, needs to be rescued from sloppy everyday use and not thrown out because of it. Whenever fascist parties take over, they did nothing to carry out anti-capitalist threats except for international finance. Confiscated property only from political opponents, foreigners, or Jews. They encouraged street fights over turf with young communists, were their most powerful propaganda images. Much like the left's darlings, Antifa and Black Lives Matter, they are kind of a gang, in my opinion. They banned strikes, dissolved independent labor unions, lowered wage earners' purchasing power, increased military spending. They changed practice of citizenship from the enjoyment of constitutional rights and duties to participation in mass ceremonies of affirmation and conformity, no rights outside of the community's interest, expanded powers of party and state and party, where each national variety of fascism jealously guarded their own recipes of national revival. The fascist intellectuals would make a place for fascism in society by weakening the elite's Enlightenment values. The fascist intellectuals were very anti-intellectual. Many academics had Machiavellian or narcissistic traits of wanting to be the smartest person in the room, polarizing the landless, disenfranchising the middle class against the left, looking for an alternative solution to communism. The fundamentals of fascist parties are to create a sense of overwhelming crisis beyond the reach of any traditional solution, primacy of the group towards which one has duties superior to every right. The group is a victim, a statement that justifies any action without legal or moral limits against its enemies, both internal and external. Does any of this sound familiar? Did Mark Carney say that he had intended, in using the Emergencies Act, to accelerate the green economy? So, back to the plot. Dread of the group's decline, under the corrosive effect of individual liberalism, class conflicts, and alien influence, the need for closer integration of a pure community by consent, if possible, but by exclusionary violence, if necessary, the need of authoritarian by natural leaders, always male, accumulating in the national chief, who alone is capable of incarnating the group's destiny, leaders' instincts over abstract and universal reason, the beauty of violence and efficiency of will when they are devoted to the group's success, the rights of the chosen people to dominate others without resistance from any kind of human or divine law, right of being directed by sole criterions of group prowess within a Darwinistic struggle, Most fascists call their organization movements, camps, bands, reassemblance, or fasci brotherhoods. They participate in left baiting, whatever that is, bribe officials, gave peasants land to outmaneuver socialists. They set aside parliamentary government, re-established strong government, and crushed Marxists. They curated economies, just like Justin Trudeau's green economy, in my personal opinion. We must see fascist rule as a never-ending struggle of preeminence within a coalition, exacerbated by the constitutional restraint and the rule of law, and by a prevailing climate of Darwinism. Over time, the Nazi prerogative state steadily encroached upon the normative state and contaminated its works, just like Welcome to the New Normal. Now for a little bit of history. Himmler, supported by Hitler, against rivals, and the Ministry of the Interior, which traditionally controlled the police, assented in April 1933 from political police commander of Bavaria, where he set up the first concentration camps at, it is DACHAU. Yeah, my German's not very good, so I'll just go with that. To chief of the whole German police system in June 1936. This process was facilitated by disgruntlement many German police had felt for the Weimar Republic and its coddling of criminals, and by regimes' efforts to enhance police prestige in the eyes of the public. They enjoyed privileged roles above the law as the final arbiters of their own form of unlimited police justice. Where here in Saskatchewan, Scott Mao and the Saskatchewan Party has repealed public access to police responsibilities, and it has been like this for 5 to 10 years now. It's my opinion that during lockdown, the only defense allowed for non-compliance of the public health orders was compliance with them. Now, for this to be the case, the courts must be de facto and operating without a proper mandate, because the only job the court could do reasonably is to provide you with a defense if you do not follow the written law. And until they fix this, in my personal opinion, they cannot be considered de jure. Now, back to the plot. Many participated willingly in medicalized killing. Made anybody? Made going once? Made going twice? Made going 3 times? Now, what ought we do with all the mangalas? So, that concludes the portion of my speech that contains information from Robert O. Paxton's Anatomy of Fascism. The rest of the information is either my arrest history over a lockdown for my non-compliance or Saskatchewan Government YouTube channel. And now that I have primed you significantly, let's look at what was said by the officials of the province of Saskatchewan. So, on March 19th, 2020, the first statement of emergency was started, Prohibition of public gatherings larger than 50 people were set into enforcement. Event venues, restaurants, bars were expected to limit their capacities to 50% or no more than 50 people, whichever is less. Social distancing of 1 to 2 meters or 6 feet. Gas stations, grocery stores, pharmacies were exempt from the social distancing order in phases 1. Phases 2 may be implemented, which would close them completely, except for takeout and delivery options. All gyms, fitness centers, bingo halls, casinos were ordered to close until further notice. Advised to limit any non-essential travel outside of the province, with exceptions to people who live in border communities, who are commuting for work. Crown utilities will be deferred interest, or will defer interest on utilities for the next 6 months of the announcement. All provincial and municipalities will implement a work-from-home policy effective March 23rd, 2020 for non-essential employees. Authorities will be cancelling all non-urgent elective surgeries, procedures, and diagnostics as of immediately, I guess. Now, March 23rd, 2020. Parents are warned of further restrictions on daycare in the days ahead. Everything to flatten the curve, right? And even throw the baby out with the bathwater. March 20th, 2020. Self-isolation programs, $450 a week for 2 weeks of a maximum of $900. Businesses will be allowed to defer PST collections for 3 months. Sick leave requirements are lifted. Audits and compliance programs have been suspended. 6-month student loan moratoriums were implemented, no longer having to provide notice or pay in lieu of notice when laying off staff. Public gatherings is limited to 25 people. Nightclubs, bars, lounges must be closed. Effective Monday, restaurants will be closed except for takeout services. Daycare are limited to 8 children. An emergency order was signed that all residents are required to comply with and all orders made by the province and the chief health officer, and all other orders are mandatory, which I frankly have a large problem with, because they cannot just take our human rights from us, have that unlimited liability. All police forces have authority to take any reasonable action to enforce those orders, including arrest. But here's the thing, under the Emergencies Act, when it was used in Saskatchewan, prior to Justin Trudeau's use of it, which apparently everybody had permission for, I was threatened with death and dismemberment from Saskatoon City Police, believe it or not. March 25th, 2020, no public gatherings more than 10 people. The government published a list of businesses that will have to close, which are clothing stores, shoe stores, flower shops, sporting goods stores, vaping stores, pawn shops, travel agencies, jewelry stores, and more. March 27th, 2020. 104 people have COVID, 9 new cases. 6 people are in hospital. Some cases are so mild you will never know you even had it, according to Dr. Shahab. Now, in the same discussion, somebody had said there was 30 new cases, 134 in total. Hospitalizations, unchanged. On March 30th, 2020, the first 2 deaths. March 31st, one-time emergency shelter fund was sanctioned, I suppose. April 1st, 2020, extending state of emergency for 2 more weeks. So, try to flatten that curve. 6 months in and just need 6 more months. Or what was it? No, maybe it's more like 24 more months. Once it comes all out in the wash. And then welcome to the new normal on Strategy's new way of living. April 3rd, 2020. Temperature and symptom checks for workers in care homes were put into enforcement. You were banned from seeing the elderly. The ban of seeing the elderly will still be put into effect, except on compassionate reasons. Put together by, apparently they think a catchy phrase was pulled together by staying apart. Saying one thing at one side of your mouth and saying something else out the other side of your mouth. April 6th, 18 recoveries. April 8th, contact tracing was put into enforcement. April 9th, emergency small business payments were announced. April 13th, more testing. Long-term care homes will be locked down for the foreseeable future. 15th, 2-week extension. Still gotta flatten that curve. April 23rd, the reopening plan, physical distancing, large gathering limits, traveling will stay in effect, will be done in phases, and any arbitrary changes to the reopening plan will be made. Good to know. Arbitrary. Unlimited liability. In phase 1 would start on May 4th, 2020. The medical services, angling, boat launch, May 15th, golf courses, June 1st, park and campground. Whew, man, gotta have those like elitist sports of, boating and golfing. One of the first things to come out of lockdown. Yeah, just gotta take care of your own, eh? Phase 2, May 19th, retail and select personal services. Phase 3, restaurants and bars at 50%. Childcare, maximum 15 kids. Remaining, personal services, gyms and fitness centers. Phase 4, recreation and entertainment, seasonal programs. Phase 5, considering lifting the long-term restrictions, dates to be announced, maybe weeks down the road, but probably not. Well, we know for certain it wasn't. It was actually a year and a half. Childcare wage supplement, the first use of new normal, according to the Saskatchewan government. July 14th, 2020. Well-being charity will be contract with We As Yet. Scott Mao and his family has been involved in the We for years. There is a contract that is being looked at, according to the Premier, and there are no other charities who are interested in helping or bidding. How about Hutterite colonies, lockdowns, school openings in August 2020. July 27th, 2020. Expect compliance with testing. Scott Mao makes testing and distancing sound optional, but in truth, the choice was made for you. Not too many contacts out of your virtual household. August 11th, 2020, school reopening on September 15th, 2020, where I suffered my first arrest. The officer reports are to make the arrested look as bad as possible, within reason, and they frequently lie in them, in my personal opinion. So, here is my first arrest. Now, I am missing 2 of my arrests over the lockdown, and they are one at Wholesale Club on 8th Street on Friday, October 8th, 2021 in Saskatoon, and the other is at Bank of Montreal on 8th Street across the street from Wholesale Club on March 15th, 2022. And the arrest at Bank of Montreal was my last arrest before the end of the lockdown. So, Tuesday, September 15th, 2020, 663 Scanlon, Michael Stephan, synopsis. Alexander Monahan, September 15th, 1990, at 10:38 hours at 120 Spadina Crescent, East, being Court of Queen's Bench, Saskatoon, did commit mischief by willfully interfering with the operations of property, to wit, Court of Queen's Bench of value not exceeding $5,000, disruption of Court of King's Bench. Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. Details 1. CST Scanlon, number 663 reports while en route patrol on September 15, 2020, in Market Unit number 221, he was dispatched to a report of a disturbance at Court of King's Bench at 520 Spadina Crescent East, called at 10:48 hours. The call was in regards to a male who attempted to bypass the COVID screening, identified as Alex Monahan, and that things had gotten physical, and currently Monahan was handcuffed and prone out on the Court of Queen's Bench stairs outside of the building, and again he would not submit to COVID screening. Upon my arrival at 10:58 hours, I barely spoke with CST Tuck, who informed me that Alexander Monahan was a male they had dealt with under file number redacted at the Department of Social Services. Monahan had been causing problems there and refusing to leave for which CST Tuck had directed him to leave the building and or get charged under the Trespass to Property Act. Monahan was subsequently charged with mischief under 5,000 in regards to his behavior, and at the Court of Queen's Bench, Monahan was still in handcuffs by the sheriff just in the foyer of the Court of Queen's Bench. Upon speaking with the staff, that Monahan had shown up at the screening area at approximately 10:38 hours and began yelling incoherent sentence regarding CST Tuck number 696, and that he wanted to see a judge immediately. The staff had informed Monahan that he would have to go through the COVID screening procedures and answer questions, for which he was now stating that the pandemic was a scam and would not adhere to the procedure. He was then directed to leave, for which he refused to leave Court of Queen's Bench building. He was going to go in. At that point, he did try to enter the building, going past the security, for which Monahan was physically escorted out of the building by court sheriff. For a second time, he then tried to re-enter the building, for which then he was physically restrained. Monahan was taken into the prone position by two deputy sheriffs and taken into custody and handcuffed for control. Okay, that's not quite what I remember. What I remember is I walked in, maybe I didn't see anybody at the table. I tried to go walk to the people at the regular security scanner, and then they tried to yeet me back to the table because I didn't understand what was going on. I was pushed out of the building while I was trying to explain myself, because the sheriff didn't want to listen to what I had to say. I finished, well, then a second person showed up when I had to re-explain myself, and I had my hand on the door, and at that point I found myself being arrested. So, let's continue. I informed Monahan at 1100 hours that he was under arrest for mischief under 5,000 and did trade out the sheriff's cuffs for my own. Monahan, when informed that he was under arrest for mischief, then muttered something under his breath, corpus, and then something inaudible. Monahan was then escorted to my PC. After a pat-down search was completed, Monahan was placed into the back of my PC, for which at 11:03 hours I did read him his rights, for which he responded yes. Asked him if he wanted to speak to a lawyer, for which he responded legal aid would be fine, and then read him the police warning, for which he responded yes, to understanding. Monahan does. This guy isn't qualified to suggest that I have mental illness. If he's not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and he's specifically trained for a specific type of mental illness or how to check them, he ought not be suggesting this, because I think even Dr. Peterson has been suggesting and lecturing, but maybe this is on behind the Peterson Academy, that a trained psychologist gets mental diagnoses wrong 50% of the time, and these people are trained. This guy isn't trained, and if he's only taken like a counselor program or something at Saskatchewan Polytechnic, that's not enough. CST Tuck and CST Vasuin, Vanthuine, remained on scene to obtain the statement from Deputy Sheriff, and I transported Monahan to SPS detention. Monahan was compliant and cooperative with myself, was booked in without incident upon arrival, and placed into the phone room at 11:26 hours. He stated he wanted to speak with legal aid, and which upon calling there was an immediate message from John Howard to leave a callback number and that he would call back as soon as possible. Monahan was left in the phone room until such time that he could speak with legal aid as per his request. Monahan will be held at Saskatoon detention until time that goes before the court, as released is not suggested at this time, as he has already caused disturbances at 2 government buildings and is believed his behavior will continue. This ends my involvement in this matter. September 17th, 2020. Ministry, Saskatchewan, caught on hot mic or maybe rolling camera, not social distancing, not wearing a mask, not being 6 feet apart. They probably didn't receive any COVID tickets for their bad behavior. September 22, 2020. Comment from Brian in the media. What do you think about people being called sheeple at Walmart for wearing a mask and growing radicalization against mask wearing, as well as the belief of thinking COVID is a scam or not real? October 1st, 2020, Scott Mao holds an election. Holy super spreader event, Batman. Was him or his staff ticketed? Probably not. November 17th, 2020, you were instructed, do not meet in public, do not meet in private. December 9th, 2020, jab rollout plan. 1,950 doses delivered by December 15th for Regional General Hospital in Regina. Pfizer delivering 10,500 jabs per week starting later in December. Moderna will deliver doses in 2021. In the first quarter, they are expecting 200 and 2,000. It's your job to take your jab when it's your turn. Just like wearing the mask and following public health orders. Yeah, well, they've made the choices for you. Then don't forget, it's safe and effective. So for phase 1, long-term care home residents and staff will go first. Healthcare workers, residents 80 years or older, then 79 to 75 and 74 to 70, residents over 50 in remote areas, northern Saskatchewan. Phase 2, anticipated to start April 2021, will continue prioritizing population and will move into general populations. Distribution will happen at public health clinics and other vaccination delivery sites. Vaccine sites, depending on jab flow, mass jab clinics will be made available. Yeah, talk about super spreader events. Were any of those people ticketed? Probably not. I bet no public officials were ticketed or arrested or imprisoned until trial, just like me, which is, my opinion, inappropriate. Depending on jab availability, age-based discrimination, which is unconstitutional, will be used to decide who gets jabbed first. Redeployment of public services commissions staff are underway to support administration tasks, data entry at jab sites. Warning, jabs are cold. But we don't have freezers to keep all the jabs at absolute zero. So we're just going to go ahead and buy a few regular freezers to try and keep them cold. Okay, December 14th, 2020. Reimagine the holidays. All by yourself. No Christmas this year. Sorry, kids. 2 people ticketed out of hundreds at a rally. It was claimed by, I think, Scott Livingston that no jurisdiction will enforce way out to success people need to follow the public health orders that set out one side of his mouth. They only work if we all follow them. And frankly, they think it's you kill everybody if you don't get one. Nice people. But out of the other side out of his mouth, in the same video, within like 5 minutes of each other, Scott Livingston wants you to know it's against the law not to comply with public health orders or tell somebody else not to do so. So, how exactly are they not going to enforce their way through this? But yet, they did enforce 17th, next week, December 22, 2020. The second jab of AstraZeneca will be available to phase 1 participants so that they can become fully vaxxed, allegedly. January 6, 2021, Tomorrow Mao will be taking to the other premiers and Justin Trudeau, 106% vaxxed. They got more out of the bottle than the manufacturers advised. Well, this may have been a very vile thing to do, because there may have been contaminants that we were finding at the bottom of the vial that they were suggesting that people not get. Will be my second arrest, and the date of January 6th was adjusted to January 18th in court. It's my understanding that due to the situation, Saskatoon police officer 679 Levetsky Jody James is no longer employed. Wednesday, January 6th, 2021, 12:45, 679 Levetsky Jody James, synopsis. Alexander Monahan, September 15th, 1990, on January 6, 2021, at 10:43 hours, at 202 Avenue C South, Saskatoon, did commit mischief by willfully interfering with lawful use, enjoyment, and property, to wit, the food bank, of value exceeding $5,000, property of Saskatoon Food Bank and Learning Center, contrary to Section 433 of the Criminal Code. Well, the bizarre thing about that sentence is why don't I have any lawful use or enjoyment of the food bank? Especially when I was living on social assistance at the time. That's kind of a bizarre thing. Alexander Monahan, September 15, 1990, on January 6, 2021, at 10:43 hours at 202 Avenue C South, Saskatoon, did assault CST Levetsky 679 with intent to resist lawful arrest of himself, contrary to Section 2071B of the Criminal Code. Monahan was arrested and transported to SPS, where he will remain in custody until he attends court. Wednesday, January 6th, 2021, 12:45. 679 Levetsky Jody James. Prosecutor's summary. 1. At 10:36 hours on January 6, 2021, Saskatoon police were dispatched to the Saskatoon Food Bank, located at 202 Avenue C South, for a disturbance call. Police received information that there is a male in the store refusing to wear a mask and refusing to leave. At 10:39 hours upon arrival, police spoke with the CN, who pointed out Alexander Monahan and explained that he was causing disturbance and by not wearing a mask and refusing to leave, and has done this several times before. And even because, like, can't a guy just get food? Like people do some crazy things when they're hungry, and it's like, what right do their staff have to threaten me, or even trying to intimidate me into wearing one? Which, did happen. I don't think any of them were charged at all. While police spoke with Monahan, he explained he refused to wear the mask as it is against his civic rights, and police exhausted all attempts trying to speak with Monahan to accompanying them outside the store. Police advised Monahan that he was under arrest for mischief and willfully attempting to take him into custody. Monahan resisted by pulling, swinging, and twisting one of the officer's fingers. Well, much later. Monahan was taken into custody, where he was advised that he was being charged with mischief over $5,000 and assaulting a police officer with intent to resist arrest. Monahan was transferred to SPS detention, where he will remain in SPS custody until such time when he can attend court. Wednesday, January 6, 2021, 11:54, 8887 Bondarchuk, Andrew, details 1. On 210106, when on patrol in PC 215, I was dispatched to 202 Avenue C South, Saskatoon Food Bank, in regards to a suspicious person referring to wear a mask or leave. The call stated male at A/A refused to wear a mask. Was there earlier in the week and refused to wear a mask then as well. Police had to remove him, requesting police to come remove him again. Just prior to arrival, about a block away, CST Levetsky told me to hurry up and chain on Channel 1. As I rushed into the door, with CST Levetsky facing him about 8 feet away, with his CEW taser drawn to the ready. There was several bystanders along the perimeter watching this unfold. As I processed the entire situation, including the overall size of the subject, a large man about 6 feet tall and easily 250 pounds. Also, the fact that CST Levetsky found it necessary to draw his CEW, or taser. His CEW gave me the idea that all verbal de-escalation has failed, and it has come to the point where there was an imminent need for control of the subject. Monahan was then told that he is under arrest. Police moved in hands-on to arrest him. He again resisted and tried to avoid getting away from police. Simultaneously, CST Vladsky and I grabbed hold of Monahan and was able to push him into the corner on top of a table, which I think they broke my back some, but not enough to need surgery. I was able to get his left arm and use a twist lock, forced him to the ground. Once on the ground, I was able to maintain control and place handcuffs on his wrists. Meanwhile, Levetsky maintained control of his other arm. 2 sets of handcuffs were used due to the size and inability to reach behind his back. While on the ground, I continued to search the male for weapons. Nothing of concern was found. He was then helped up and escorted to PC 172. I then returned inside to speak with the manager and check the video. I spoke with the director of the operations at the food bank. She appreciated the police assistance and was willing to provide a witness statement. She did inform me, though, that video was not available. Director stated that she seemed the entire incident and echoed that in her statement. She noted that the subject had been in the food bank several times, each time, and offered a mask in order to use their service. Director then stated that he refused to listen to police and witnessed the male punch and push the police before he was arrested. Once in SPS cell, he was informed to wear a mask, which again he refused and even spun around to get away. He was ultimately allowed in and booked in by detention staff. Wednesday, January 6th, 2021, 12:57, 679 Levetsky, Jody James, details 2. 10:36 hours on January 6, 2021, I, CST Levetsky, number 679, was dispatched to the Saskatchewan Food Bank, or Saskatoon Food Bank, located at 202 Avenue C South, for a disturbance. CAD, or CAD screen, had indicated that there is a male refusing to wear a mask or leave. This same male has done this in the past and was escorted out by police yesterday. At 10:39 hours upon arrival, I was met at the door by the CN director, who had unlocked the door and allowed me inside. She pointed out a male, now known to me as Alexander Monahan, and explained he is refusing to wear a mask or leave. I noted several other persons in the store standing around by the counter, including staff members behind the counter. I walked over to Monahan and asked what is going on, where he stated he is being refused service. I explained it is due to him wearing a mask, and he replied that he refused to wear a mask as it is against his civic rights. I explained it is his regulated by Saskatoon Health, and that all persons have to wear a mask when in public places, and that it is not a personal towards him. Again, he refused. I offered to get him a mask and explained he just needs to wear it for a short period while in the store and then could leave, but again he refused. We negotiated for several minutes, and it was clear to me by the demeanor that there was no convincing him to put on a mask. He refused, referred to me as a communist, and enforcing communist law. At this point, I knew negotiating with him was unsuccessful. I then said I will have to escort him out of the premises and grabbed on to his right sleeve with my fingertips so that it would appear as a passive gesture, and he immediately ripped his hand from me and shouted, "No." I then observed that he was under arrest for mischief and grabbed on the front of his jacket, like the lapel. He actively resisted by pushing me away and yelling out, "I will not wear a mask." This isn't the right order of operations, but I guess has his right to his opinion. I grabbed on him again, and we tussled back and forth while I was trying to get control of him and maneuver him outside. This went on for a couple of minutes as I tried to gain control of him, and he attempted to get me into a headlock by swinging his arms at my head and grabbing, but was unsuccessful. Which didn't happen, I was maybe trying to hit toss him at one point, but that's it, I wasn't trying to headlock him. He did manage to get a hold of him left hand, ring finger, and began twisting it, causing some pain, where I followed up punching him back the face. This made him release his grip on my finger, where I punched him back to gain distance and drew my taser, warning him to stay back. I heard earlier on the air, after calling for a unit to assist, that CST Bondarchuk was only seconds away. Now realizing that I was not going to be able to take Monahan into custody without injuring him. Thus I held him until CST Bondarchuk, running inside through the doorway, where I holstered up my taser and again advised Monahan that he was under arrest. Both CST Bondarchuk and myself grabbed onto him again, where he actively resisted by pulling us, trying to break our grip, where we both pushed him into a nearby wall and struggled with him for a few seconds, to where we were able to get him on the ground and in cuffs. Once we got him pinned to the ground and cuffed, he no longer resisted. At 10:50 hours, Monahan was escorted to the back of my patrol vehicle. I again explained that he was under arrest for mischief and provided him with his rights and counsel and warning, to where he replied yes to his rights and yes to the warning. And when asked if he would like to speak to legal aid or legal counsel, he replied with please. I tended back to speak with CST Bondarchuk and director and learned there is no cameras inside the facility, and she again confirmed to operate option was shut down temporarily while Monahan was inside the store. I was noted on Sims while confirming his ID that he was charged for not wearing a mask on December 15th, 2020 in the Saskatoon Food Bank, and police were called on him yesterday to remove him. I believe on December 15th I only received a ticket, which I haven't yet paid. I noted my left hand ring was starting to feel tight and swollen. When I returned to my PC, number 172, I advised Monahan that he was being charged with assaulting a police officer with intent to resist arrest. Monahan was transported to SPC detention. Upon arrival, CST Bondarchuk and I explained that he was required to wear a mask while in detention, and again he refused, stating it was against his civic rights, and we are communists. Then required for CST Bondarchuk to get the detention CGT to make a decision. CGT Tatryan explained to Monahan who he was and that he is required to wear a mask for his safety, and again the stated that he refused to wear a mask. CGT officer approached him, where he immediately started to actively resist and pulling and twisting his head, and CGT Titran said, okay, that's good, and we no longer tried to make him wear a mask. At 11:30 hours, at his request, Monahan was put into contact with legal aid and spoke with somebody. Monahan will remain in CST custody until such time that he can attend court. Now, that's not my exact remembering of what happened. As far as I remember, we had a discussion, and I told this officer, Lebetsky, that why can't I just get food and leave in peace? I think that was a part of our conversation, and when I wasn't just willing to worship the ground he walked on, he decided to put on these black leather gloves with hard black plastic plates on them. First thing he did was grab me by the jacket, take a step back and pull me, and then jab me in the face. He did that a second time, and on the third time, he was winding up to really lay into me, and without thinking too much, I seem to have leapt at his hips to try and push him over, as far as I can remember. And then after I nearly pushed him over and he found his feet again, he grabbed my jacket and pulled it over my head. And then when he ripped my backpack off after that, after he pulled the jacket over my head, he started jabbing me in the crown of my skull, like on the top. He then decided to pull my backpack off, throw that outside, and then that released my arms and my ability to stand up. At that point, I tried to hip toss him, which he claimed was trying to be a headlock. And then I saw the other guy at the door standing there, which I kind of thought he was just standing there watching the whole thing the whole time. And when they pushed me towards the wall, they actually bent me over a table, which I again think broke my back some, but maybe not enough to need surgery. Let's continue with what the Saskatchewan government was saying. January 19th, 2021, not following public health orders will be met with indefinite closure of your business to ensure compliance. Not enforcing your way out of this, right? Saying one thing out of one side of your mouth and the other thing out the other side of your mouth. We are hearing names like Crackers and Taps for establishments that are not complying. Seems to me, Got Mao is saying, I will not comply with the federal government, but anybody who steps out of line with me will be punished severely. February 11th, 2021, up your mask game apparently. One mask isn't enough. Put on 2 masks. Put on 5 masks. Hell, wear a burqa with 6 masks underneath it. March 2nd, 2021. 4 months between doses. March 4th, 2021. Any jab is the right jab. Yeah, well, what's the worst that could happen, right? Mix them. March 10th. Getting needles in the arm. Out of book appointments. Yeah, because they want to stick it to COVID, right? March 16th. Jabs in people's arms and in large quantities. Yeah, that's the last thing he said. Is like, I guess you need a barrel worth. Because, make sure you're bulletproof. March 18th, 2021. Day by day. March 23rd. No audio. March 25th. There has been breakthrough cases. Egads. Plans are foiled again. April 7th, 2021. Provide some information about case numbers. April 13th, 2021. Household bubbles are collapsed, reducing attendance at worship throughout the Saskatchewan, reduced to 30 as effective as Friday. Private indoor gatherings are restricted to immediate households only. Not like they have any power to actually do this. Now, this is my 3rd arrest, and it occurred at Varsity View Dental Group, where I was trying to schedule an appointment, and I did offer to go home and isolate for 2 weeks so I could come back and get my tooth removed, but they refused me and suggested that wasn't a good enough solution. And when the officer showed up, the first thing he did was put his hand on my throat. And that's how things started off. So, let's get into this. Thursday, April 15th, 2020, 10:34. 973 Huxton. It's Husnick, Alexander, synopsis. And I believe, as well, during the trial, this officer pointed a gun at the judge, so I believe he's no longer employed because of that. Alexander Monahan at 0845 hours at Varsity Dental Group at 210 1414 8th Street East in Saskatoon did commit mischief by willfully interfering with the operation of business, to wit, Varsity View Dental Group, office of the value not exceeding $5,000, contrary to section 434 of the Criminal Code. Alexander Monahan, September 15th, 1990, on April 15th, 2021, at 8:75 hours, at Varsity Dental Group, located at 201 1414 8th Street in Saskatoon, did assault CST Huxton, 973, with intent to resist the lawful arrest of himself, contrary to Section 270, 1B of the Criminal Code. Okay, Alexander Monahan, September 15th, 1990, on April 15th, 2021, at 8:75 hours at Varsity Dental Group, located at 201 1414 8th Street East in Saskatoon, did resist CST Husnick, 973, a peace officer engaged in a lawful, maybe not so lawful, execution of his duties by pulling away and resisting to be handcuffed, and refused to provide his name and date of birth, contrary to section 29A. Well, the guy puts his hands on your throat. All you can do is take it off, give it back to him, and ask him to bring himself into order. If he doesn't do that, you think a fight isn't going to break out? It doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. Alexander Monahan, September 15th, 1990, was taken into custody and transported to SPS Detention Center, where he will remain until he appears before a provincial court justice or judge. Thursday, April 15th, 2021, 10:34, 973 Huxton, Alexander. Prosecutor's case summary. On April 15th, 2021, at approximately 0850 hours, police attended to Varsity View Dental Group, located at 201 1414 8th Street East, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, for report of patient refusing to wear a mask and leave the premises. This dispatch information provided indicated the following: escort patient refusing to wear a mask, male patient also refusing to leave. No other information was provided at this time. Police attended scene where a male Alexander, September 15, 1990, was located standing at the reception desk of the AA. The male attended to the AA in order to attempt to book a dental appointment, however, was denied several service as he was refusing to wear a mask as per the public health orders. When Monahan was asked to leave by staff members, he refused. What is a mask going to do to change the outcome of a dental appointment when you got to take the damn thing off to poke around in my mouth anyhow? As long as I can make the appointment, come back in 2 weeks after I've isolated to make you feel better, how's that? How can I do more for you? I don't understand. That should be more than enough. Monahan was informed multiple times that he is now trespassing and was given multiple opportunities to leave the premises. He refused to leave. Monahan was informed that he now under arrest for trespass to property act when officers attempted to take him into custody. Upon attempts to cuff Monahan, he began to resist and fight with police by pulling away and pushing police officers. After a short time, Monahan was successfully taken into custody without any injuries and transported to SPS Police Detention Center, where he will remain until he can be seen by a provincial court judge. Monahan was charged with multiple offenses, including mischief under 5,000, assault police with intent to resist, and obstruct police officer. Monahan was also issued an assault number, failing to leave the premises as soon as practicable after being requested by the occupants. I leave contrary to Section 1(3)(c) of the Trespass to Property Act. And I believe this Trespass to Property Act wasn't put into enforcement until January 2020 or before January 2021. Thursday, April 15th, 2021, 10:07, 988 Lynch, Julian, details 2. On April 15th, 2021, at 8:47 hours, CST Lynch, number 988, was working in full uniform in marked PC and partnered with my FTO, CST Schaffner, number 771, was dispatched to the 1400 block of 8th Street East in regards to a disturbance. PC number 323, driven by CST Husnik, who also dispatched to the call. Information in the call stated that the escort patient was refused to wear a mask, and that the male patient was also refusing to leave Varsview Dental Group. While en route to call CST Huxton, the male was en route to call CST Huxton aired out that the male was trying to fight with him. He then initiated our lights and sirens and hurried to the location. Once we arrived, entered the building while the staff members inside the building pointed upstairs. While going upstairs, we could hear CST Huxton interact with the male upstairs. Once we arrived upstairs, CST Huxton telling the male that he was under arrest, but the male was refusing to listen. To command and also pull away from CST Huxton, refusing to be placed under arrest. Myself, CST Schaffner, and CST Husnick struggled to get the male, under arrest. The male continued to pull away and resist arrest. During the struggle, the male was pushed up against the wall. I grabbed onto his right arm. CST Schaffner grabbed onto his left arm, and at this point, the male arms were placed behind his back and handcuffed were placed on him. Once handcuffs, the male was escorted out of the building and searched before being placed in the back of our PC. Once in the back of our PC, officers attempted to try to get a name from the male. The male refused to answer any of our questions regarding his identity. At this time, we contacted CST Husnick, who was inside getting a statement from the staff members inside the building. He was able to get information from the staff regarding his individual identity. And this probably came off of my medical records that they had, which was likely illegal. The male was later identified as Alex Monahan. His identity was confirmed through SIMS, and a mugshot was brought up. The match that matched the individual that was in the back of our vehicle. At 0909 hours, I informed Alex that he was being placed under arrest for mischief, assaults, PO, and obstruct as well. I also informed him that he was going to be issued a trespass ticket. I then read him his rights and warnings, to which he did not respond. Alex also did not respond to police warnings when it was read. Further investigation into Alex's history shows that he done this in the past, and he has received similar charges and also been banned from a few businesses on his behavior. At 0920 hours, we were en route to detention, arriving at 0928 hours. Once in detention, Alex was asked questions by the paramedics. Alex refused to answer any questions regarding COVID, but answered every other question that was asked by the paramedic. Alex was further booked in without incident at 0938 hours. Alex required to speak to legal aid. I contacted legal aid and was in touch with attorney, and at 0940 hours, Alex spoke with legal aid. Once Alex was done speaking with legal aid, he was escorted to his cell. Alex will remain in SPS detention until he sees a judge or justice of the peace. This ends my involvement with this file. Thursday, April 15th, 2021, 10:13, 771 Schaffner Adam, Details 1. On April 15th, 2021, at 8:47 hours, while on patrol in marked PC number 315 with CST Lynch number 988, we were dispatched to a disturbance at number 201 1414 8th Street East in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. While we were driving to a call, I was able to read that a patient at the dental clinic was refusing to wear a mask, and this patient was also refusing to leave. A second car was also dispatched to this call, which call with the driver being CST Husnik. While we were driving to the call, I noticed that CST Husnik arrived at scene in his PC approximately at 08:51 hours. We were still some ways away, proceeding down 8th Street to get closer. At approximately 09:02 hours, I heard over the radio a struggle in which I believe it was CST Husnik asking for assistance. It was then confirmed by the dispatch who arrived, advised CST Husnik did need assistance and was asking how close we were to getting to the address. We immediately activated our emergency lights and sirens and proceeded as quickly as possible to the Varsity Dental Group parking lot, where we observed CST Husnik's vehicle. We arrived on scene at 09:04 hours. I jumped out of my marked PC as I was the passenger quite quickly and proceeded up to the front of the building trying to get to the door. However, finding the door was locked. After a few moments, a female was able to open those front doors to allow us in, and as soon as I came into the lobby area, I came around the corner. I could hear a struggle going on upstairs. Myself, along with CST Lynch, ran up the stairs, and as soon as I came around the corner into the lobby area of the dental clinic, I could see a very large male pushed up against the wall with CST Husnik struggling with this male. This large male was identified as Alexander Monahan. As I was running over to assist CST Husnik, I was able to grab Alex again, that he was under arrest, and I could see that this male was still struggling with Husnik. I was able to grab Alex's left arm and try and start talking around control of that arm. That should be noted that Alex is very large, and he was approximately 1.5 feet taller than CST Husnik, as well as large and taller than myself. So I must not have been fighting very hard if somebody smaller than me had me pinned against a wall. I grabbed Alex's left arm and started pulling it, attempting to get it behind him. At this point, I could see that CST Lynch was grabbing his other arm, as well as CST Husnik, trying to control him. He was quite strong, and a brief struggle ensued, in which eventually Alex was pinned over into the corner and a doorway area, and I was able to pull his arm behind him, getting him into a hold and able to gain control. His left arm, which I kept behind his back, and pushed him against the wall so that he could not move. At this point, everything was able to become somewhat static because he was no longer struggling, and he was in a position that he couldn't fight with us. I removed my handcuffed the arm I had, and with assistance of CST Husnik and Lynch, we were able to get the handcuffs on his other arm, and he was at that point handcuffed. After a few brief moments of rest, I advised Alex that he does need to stand up, and he is going to be going to our PC. He complained with that, stood up and walking down the stairs out to her marked PC, where he was searched, ensuring he had no weapons, and placed in the back of our PC. Also advising Alex that he was being audio and video recorded while in the back of our marked PC. After Alex was safely in the back of our PC, I briefly spoke with CST Lynch and was as CST Husnick to see exactly what charges Alex was facing, what he was arrested for, as there was no time to speak before Alex's active struggle with CST Husnick. At that point, I was advised that based upon what Alex was doing inside, he was being charged with assaulting a police officer in regards to resisting arrest. He was also being charged with obstruction as well as mischief for interfering with lawful operation of that business and given trespass ticket, as well as he was told numerous times by staff as well as CST Husnick to leave the property. However, he refused to do so. At that point, CST Husnick left to get statements from staff at the dental clinic with myself, and CST Lynch got inside our marked PC to attempt to identify the male, as we don't know who he was at the time. Alex, who was sitting in the back of our marked PC, was uncooperative. He would not say anything. When he was advised of his rights and warning by CST Lynch, he would identify himself in any way. However, we were given his information from CST Husnick, who was inside the dental clinic, was able to convey information that he had received from the dental clinic about the male's identity. Once we received his name, we were able to query him and confirm that if was in fact Alex Monahan, using the mugshot from our local system. Once his ID was confirmed by officers, I noted that he had numerous charges previously for being arrested as well. He also had various conditions for not being at the courthouse and other locations based upon his anti-masking, anti-establishment behavior. Alex was transported to SPS detention, where he was booked in. At this point, Alex started talking and stated that he wished to speak to a lawyer. CST Lynch facilitating his lawyer call, and Alex was placed in the cell when he will remain until he's placed before a justice or judge. This ends my involvement with the file. Thursday, April 15th, 2021, 10:34, 973, Husnick, Alexander, details 3. On April 15th, 2021, CST Husnick, 973, was on patrol in marked PC 323 when at 08:47 hours I was dispatched to Varsity View Dental Group located at 201 1414 8th Street East, Saskatoon, for the report of a male patient refusing to wear a mask and refusing to leave. The dispatch information provided the following: escort patient refused to wear a mask, male patient also refusing to leave. No other dispatch information was provided at this time. At 08:51 hours, I arrived on scene. Upon arrival, I was met by the front door, by the AA, by the CN. The CN stated that a former patient of the dental office, Alexander Monahan, September 15th, 1990, was standing at the reception desk refusing to wear a mask and refusing to leave. The CN identified that Monahan had no reason to be at the dental office as he did not have an appointment. So how are you supposed to schedule one? The CN indicated that Monahan in fact had an appointment booked on April 12th, 2021. Alright, had I booked one already? The CN stated that they asked Monahan multiple times to wear a mask and even offered to provide a mask or a shield. However, Monahan refused, stating that he wanted to book an appointment. The CN indicated that they informed Monahan that he is no longer welcome at the dental office and that they would not treat him and he would have to find another dental office. However, Monahan continued to refuse to leave, attempting to intimidate the female staff members, which I don't believe happened. Maybe I was a little aggravated for being treated like a leper. Intimidate the female staff members with a aggressive type stance. No, I'm behind a desk. How can you even see that? I attended to the receptionist area where I located a male who is now known to me as Alexander Monahan. September 15th, 1990, standing at the reception desk, I could see that the male had large stature of approximately 6'2" and weighed greater than approximately 250 pounds. I could see that the male was not wearing a mask and turned towards me in an aggressive type manner. I calmly approached the male, informing him that I am a police officer and that I was called as he was not abiding by the public health order and that was now refusing to leave the premises. Monahan stated that he did not need to wear a mask and it is his right and that he would not leave the dental office until they let him book an appointment. I informed Monahan that he was no longer welcome at the AA and that he was in fact trespassing at this time. I informed Monahan that he needed to leave the premises, that he was asked to leave multiple times by the occupier, and that he was now contravening the Trespass to Property Act. I informed Monahan that trespass was in fact an arrestable offense. However, I was more than willing to work with him if he was willing to comply and leave the AA. Monahan stated that he was not going to leave and that it was his right to book an appointment. I informed Monahan that if he was unwilling to leave the premises, he was going to be placed under arrest. I gave Monahan approximately 5 to 10 opportunities to leave the premises, continuously reminding him that trespass is an arrestable offense. At 08:57 hours, I informed Monahan that he was in fact under arrest and trespassing. At 08:57 hours, I grabbed into Monahan that was in fact under arrest for trespassing. At 08:57 hours, I grabbed onto Monahan left wrist against informing him he was under arrest, attempting to place him in handcuffs behind his back. As I attempted to place him in handcuffs, he pulled away, double-handed pushed me away from him. I then pulled onto Mr. Monahan's t-shirt and pushed him towards the wall. No, that didn't happen. He just walked up, grabbed my shirt, which was already ripped, and ripped it some more, like a bitch. Because, really, only women tend to rip clothing. I then pulled onto Monahan's t-shirt and pushed him towards the wall. I then pinned Monahan toward the wall, holding him against the wall with my left hand. I held onto Monahan's Shirt. I held onto Monahan's left wrist with my right hand. At this point, I informed dispatch and other respondents until that the male was attempting to fight and I required backup. At 08:58 hours until 3:15, which CST Snoffner and CST Lynch arrived on scene. At 08:59 hours, Monahan was taken into custody and placed into handcuffs behind his back without further incident. CST Lynch provided Monahan with his rights and counsel and police warning. Please see CST Levetsky's report for further details regarding Monahan's rights to counsel and police warning and transport to details. At 09:15 hours, I received a written witness statement from the CN. The witness statement can be summarized as following. Alex Monahan walked in to book an appointment. He wasn't wearing a mask and was asked to put one on. An officer times. He refused and would not leave. He was asking multiple times to leave but refused. I called SPS to have an officer escort him off the property. While he was here, we had to move all of our patients out of the waiting area to keep everybody safe. The CN further indicated that Monahan did in fact not have an appointment booked on this date and that he was in fact not welcome back at the dental office. At 10:20 hours, I attempted to SPS Detention Center where I issued Monahan with a SOT number for failing to leave the premises after being required by occupiers contrary to Section 3AC of the Trespass to Property Act. Informed Monahan that he has a payable option of $250 no later than May 27th. Well, I think I was held in prison longer than that, so yeah, good luck. A lot of good that did me. 27th, 2021, and that he could attend court if he wished at Traffic Council on June 10th, 2021 at 0900 hours. Monahan will remain in SPS Detention Center until he can be seen by a provincial court justice. May 4th, 2021, reopening, or it's the reopening roadmap, is a third step plan to slowly lift lockdown restrictions. And yes, they still think they can negotiate with you on your liberty, which is God-given, and they can't take from you. Step 1 will occur once vax eligibility become open to all adults province-wide and 3 weeks after 70% of residents 40 and older have received their first jab. Household bubbles can expand to 10 people. Public indoor gatherings have increased to 30 people. Public outdoor gatherings up to 150 people. Restaurants can have up to 6 at a table. Places of worship can have up to 150 people or up to 30% of occupancy, whichever is less. Intense gym and fitness centers can reopen, and the masking expectations will remain in place. Step 2 will begin 3 weeks after every person 30 and older has received their first GB jab, and 3 weeks after Step 1 has started. Households gatherings will be increased to 15. Public indoor gatherings, private outdoor gatherings, and public outdoor gatherings can increase to 150 people. This will also apply to events, facilities, casinos, bingo halls, theaters, and art galleries, libraries, rec centers as well. No capacity limits on retail and personal care services. No table sizes limits at restaurants. Restrictions on youth and adult sports will be lifted. Step 3 will start 3 weeks after 70% of adults in the province receiving their first jab, and 3 weeks have passed since Step 2 has started. Most remaining residents will be lifted. Masking could be permanent depending on how well you get in line like a good little communist and get that jab. May 11th, 2021. Have a safe reopening. Breakthrough cases start after 3 weeks of jabbing. It's okay to mix your jabs. What's the worst that could happen? This will be my fourth Rex coming up next. This will be the last little insert before the conclusion and before we wrap this whole thing up. So don't stay in your seats, and if you're still with me, we're almost at the end. Tuesday, May 18th, 2021, 10:35, 963 Duke, Cailín, Cailean for proper pronunciation if I got it wrong. Synopsis 1, Alexander Monahan. September 15th on May 18th, 2021 at 08:44 hours at 103 Hospital Drive, Saskatoon, did commit an assault on Chris Clark by punching him in the face, contrary to Section 226 of the Criminal Code. Alexander Monahan, September 15th, 1990, on May 18th, 2021, at 08:44 hours at 0303 Hospital Drive, Saskatoon, did, while being at large on a release order, fail to comply with one or more conditions thereof, to wit, stay inside the approved residence 24 hours a day, unless you have the prior written permission of your probation officer or designate or court and came to the door, designate or the court and came to the door of your approved residence when asked to do so by a probation officer or designate or police officer, who may be checking the residence and curfew conditions of the order, contrary to Section 145(5)(a) of the Criminal Code. Monahan was transported to SPS detention, where he will remain in custody until being placed before a justice or judge to answer to these charges. Tuesday, May 18th, 2021, 10:40, 963 Duke, Cailín. Prosecutor Case Summary 1. On May 18th, 2021, at 08:44 hours, Saskatoon Police Service received a call for service regarding a disturbance at 103 Hospital Drive for a report of a disturbance. The initial call information stated that Protective Services had a male in custody, as he had been asked to leave but then refused and began fighting with the complainant. Saskatoon police officer attended to the scene and spoke with the Royal University Hospital Protective Services, who had a male under arrest for assault who was refused to provide his name. Officers arrested the male for assault who was refusing to provide his name. Officers arrested the male for assaulting one of the Protective Services members and were able to identify the male as Alexander Monahan, September 15th, 1990. Monahan had been placed in rear handcuffs prior to police arrival. When attempting to escort Monahan to the patrol vehicle, he was passively resistant, and it took officers to lift and carry Monahan to the vehicle. He was cleared at scene by a doctor and transported to SPS detention. Once at SPS detention, Monahan still refused to wear a mask and refused to exit the patrol vehicle on his own. He was carried and placed onto a wheelchair and wheeled into his cell. Monahan was issued a spot for failing to wear a mask in public. as well as for trespass at Royal University Hospital. He was also found to be subject to a 24-hour curfew under release orders, upon which he was breaching. Monahan was read the appropriate charter rights and warnings for his charges. However, he refused to respond to them. He will remain in custody until being placed before a judge or justice to answer these charges. Tuesday, May 18th, 2021, 10:40, 963 Duke, Lesnan, details 1. On May 18th, 2021, at 0844 hours, Saskatoon Police Service received a call for service regarding a disturbance at 103 Hospital Drive for a report of a disturbance. The initial call informed that Protective Services had a male in custody, as he had been asked to leave but then refused and began fighting with the complainant. At 08:49 hours, 1 CST Duke 963 was working patrol detail in full uniform, operating marked police or PC number 312, assigned to East District at this time, was dispatched to the above calls for service. At 08:54 hours, I arrived on scene and spoke with Protective Services Candace Nolan, September 8th, 1992, who was a member of the Royal University. So advised me that the male who had been arrested had attended to the emergency entrance and refused to wear a mask. The male then refused to leave when asked to do so by Protective Services, as he was then trespassed. Protective Services members went to remove the male, who then assaulted one of them. As I was speaking with Nolan, I did observe a large male laying prone on the floor in rear handcuffs. At 08:58 hours, based on this information, I advised the male that he was under arrest for assaulting a police officer and asked what his name was. He was silent. I searched a small bag that the male had with him and located a wallet with a Saskatchewan driver's license to identify the male as Alexander Monahan, September 15th, 1990. I again attempted to have Monahan respond to me, but he stayed silent. It should be noted that he was not wearing any type of mask or face covering. I attempted to have Monahan sit up so I could get him standing, but he was passively resisting. He did not activate his legs whatsoever and refused to stand without being held by multiple people. By this point, CST Shalovelo, SHALOVELO, had arrived to assist. With the help of Protective Services, CST Shalovelo and I were able to lift Monahan into a wheelchair to escort him to my PC. My PC again refused to stand on his own power and needed to be assisted by CST Shavello and myself. I was able to switch handcuffs at this point and returned Nolan's handcuffs to her. With a great deal of effort, we were able to place Monahan in the back of the PC, number 312. Once he was inside, advised him that everything was audio and video recorded. At 09:11 hours, I read Monahan his charter rights to consult counsel verbatim from the front of my police issued notebook. When I asked if he wished to speak with a lawyer, Monahan replied, yes. At 09:12 hours, I read Monahan a police warning verbatim from the front of my police issued notebook. When I asked if he understood, he again refused to answer. I queried Monahan on CPIC and noted he had a 24-hour curfew condition, which I was later able to confirm through Central Records. I spoke with CST Salvedo, who advised me that she had provided the appropriate member of Royal University Hospital's Protective Services the necessary forms to complete a statement and provide them with victim impact statements. Prior to leaving, Dr. Brizzle from the hospital did attend to the PC and speak with Monahan, who was cleared of any immediate medical attention. At 09:17 hours, I transported Monahan to SPS detention. We arrived at 09:22 hours. Once in detention, Monahan refused to exit the patrol vehicle on his own. In addition, he was advised several times by CGT Noland that he needed to wear a mask. While in detention, Monahan continuously refused. Monahan was removed from the PC and again placed in a wheelchair to be escorted into detention and booked in. As he refused to wear a mask, CJ Nolan did apply a spit sock in place of a mask, as it would not be able to be removed by Monahan. Monahan was passively restrained throughout booking and processed and attempted to shake his head on removing the spit sock unsuccessfully. He was then escorted to cell number 30, where he again refused to get out of the wheelchair and needed to be assisted by CST Shalvello and myself. I then attended to the center record and confirmed that Monahan was subject to a release order dated April 20th, 2021, and a 24-hour curfew condition. At 10:15 hours, I advised Monahan that he was also being arrested for failing to comply with his release order. I read him a charter warning verbatim from the front of my police issue notebook. When I asked if he understood, Monahan refused to respond. I also read Monahan a police warning verbatim from the front of my police issued handbook. When I asked if he understood, Monahan remained silent and refused to answer. At 10:16 hours, I read Monahan a police warning verbatim from the front of my police issued notebook. When I asked if he understood, Monahan did not respond. I also issued Monahan a soft failing to wear a mask, contrary to the Public Health Act, and CST Salvellos issued a ticket for trespass. For further details, please refer to CST Chavello's report. This concludes my involvement at this time. Tuesday, May 18th, 2021, 10:52, 975 Chavello, Mallory. Details 2. On May 963, CST Shalvedo was en route patrol until in Unit 323 at 08:09 hours. CST Dick number 963 and I were dispatched to a disturbance located at 103 Hospital Drive, Royal University Hospital. Dispatch information detailed in emergency. Protective Services has Mel in custody, was asked to leave property and refused, then started fighting with CN. CST Duke arrived on scene a couple minutes prior to my unit, and right as I arrived on scene at the same time and entered the hospital emergency foyer. At this time, I observed multiple hospital security officers as well as CST Duke standing, while around unknown male sitting on the floor, handcuffed, not wearing a mask. I know at this time, subject, arrested male, later confirmed to be Alexander Monahan, September 15th, 1990. I verbally instructed this male to stand up, as he did not look to be in any pain and able to stand on his own. Alexander did not say anything and continued to sit on the floor. As we needed to get Alexander into the PC to aid him, I took control of his right side of his body. I placed my hand under his arm, and lifted him up with the help of CST Duke. On the other side, Alexander was displaying passive resistance behavior throughout entire encounter, as he stayed silent and refused to follow. Officers put a wheelchair below him so he would be able to be wheeled out of the building. Alexander was taken to PC 312, and as he continued to resist police and verbal instructions, Duke and security staff took control of Alexander to get him into the back. I then went to the other side, got into the back of the PC, and aided us in any way. It should be noted, as soon as we closed both doors, he then sat up on his own. I gathered a verbal statement from Candace Nolan, the security guard who had the verbal interaction with Alexander, as well as Chris Clark, the security supervisor, had been assaulted. Candace went on to explain Alexander into him the hospital entrance area and inquired about dental help. Candace then told him the hospital was not the place to get help for that sort of issue, and to come inside he needed to put on a mask, as this was the private business. Alexander refused to do so. Candace called for other hospital security to come and assist. When they attempted to escort Alexander outside, he became actively resistant and subsequently punched Chris Clark in the face. Chris corroborated this, indicated as well as shown me a small horizontal cut on the upper bridge of his nose that was due to the assault. Chris Clark was wearing glasses at the time of the incident, and the cut appeared to have been from the force of Alexander punching the glasses into his face. MDV was not required. Each security officer, Colin Stumborg, Kim Aquino, Matthew Flock, as well as Clark and Noland, were provided with witness statements, ensured they would drop off the statements to SPS Service Center. I went to SPS detention to assist CST Duke in successfully getting Alexander into detention cell. We arrived there at 09:22 hours due to the event at the hospital and mask refusal. Detention CGT, Noland attempted to speak with Alexander in the Sally Port. Alexander continued to refuse to come out of the PC on his own and would not communicate at all. After given multiple opportunities, a spit sock was placed on Alexander and play as a replacement for a medical grade mask. It should not be noted this is mandatory for anybody entering SPS detention. Alexander was again placed in the wheelchair and moved into the building. He was searched by detention staff and placed into cell number 30. After a SIM history search was completed, and it showed Alexander is currently on 24-hour curfew and is currently breaching his release order in addition to new assistant assault charges. It was indicated Alexander had 5 tickets issued to him for failing to wear a mask as per current public health orders. CST Duke issued him another of this date, or on this date, and I also issued Alex a ticket under the Trespass to Properties Act, specifically Sections 3.1c, failed to leave premises as soon practicable after being required by the occupier to leave. This ticket was explained to Alexander and placed in his property. This concludes my involvement with this file at this time. May 25th, 2021, to the unvaxxed. Must be making a conscious choice to not get the jabbed or get jabbed, and ought to know the choices of your decisions trying to defend your personal freedoms. It's your fault we're not free, as bizarre as Scott Mao thinks it might be. Mao claims he doesn't like forcing the lockdown on you, but you just better get in line and agree, as well as comply. Getting jabbed is doing something about it, and not getting jabbed isn't changing until you agree and comply. Okay. To conclude, between the Jew IDs, that was the Vax passes, my mistake, the Jew lines, red lines, how about we agree on attendance limits? Now, I hope this explanation helps you understand my concern about lockdown and why I fear God and would not wear a mask. You should ask yourself, did the trucker convoyers experience the same kind of arrest and mistreatment that I did? Thank you much for listening.